Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Leviticus chapter 21. We've wrapped up the section on ethical purity in Leviticus, and now we're moving into one for rules and requirements for the priests. In the chiastic structure of Leviticus, these chapters will mirror chapters 6 through 10. They showed off the duties of the priests when it came to offering sacrifices, and told the story of their ordination and the irreverence and death of Nadab and Abihu. And in this chapter, we'll highlight how the priests are called to a higher standard than the laity. But we'll also see a foreshadowing of Jesus and his atoning work, how he covers over sin and impurity for all people, regardless of social status. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, no one shall defile himself for a dead person among his people, except for his relatives who are nearest to him, his mother and his father and his son and his daughter and his brother, also for his virgin sister who is near to him because she has had no husband. For her he may defile himself." So this first regulation laid on the priests is that they are not to touch any dead bodies. Now Leviticus 11 instructed the people to stay away from the carcasses of dead animals, especially unclean animals. But we see here the extra holiness that the priests are called to, that they're not to touch even human dead bodies. Now the exception to that is that they can touch the bodies of their close relatives. But that was only because it was their familial responsibility to bury the body. He shall not defile himself as a relative by marriage among his people, and so profane himself. They shall not make any baldness on their heads, nor shave off the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts in their flesh. They shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God, for they present the offerings by fire to the Lord, the food of their God, so they shall be holy. Being holy as God is holy is an utmost requirement for the priesthood. They shouldn't marry any of their relatives, because incest was outlawed in Leviticus 18 and 20. They weren't to shave their heads or make cuts on their bodies to show their separation from the pagan priesthoods of Israel's neighbors. Laws similar to these were given in Leviticus 19 for the rest of the people. And we're starting to see how the priests require a little bit of extra holiness. If they're held to a higher standard than the rest of the people in Israel, then they need to keep the base laws as well. They shall not take a woman who is profaned by harlotry, nor shall they take a woman divorced from her husband, for he is holy to his God. You shall consecrate him, therefore, for he offers the food of your God. He shall be holy to you. For I, the Lord, who sanctifies you, am holy. Also, the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by harlotry, she profanes her father. She shall be burned with fire. There's also a higher standard applied to the family members of the priests. The priests aren't allowed to marry a woman who's been divorced, and the death penalty is given to the daughters of priests who become prostitutes. And this is because sin doesn't happen in a vacuum. It affects our friends and our families. It spreads and corrupts. These requirements are strict, but breaking these commandments could taint the holiness of the priests, which means, like Nadab and Abihu, they could be killed if they uncleanly or irreverently entered the presence of God. The priest who is the highest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil has been poured, and who has been consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head, nor tear his clothes, nor shall he approach any dead person, nor defile himself even for his father or his mother, nor shall he go out of the sanctuary, nor profane the sanctuary of his God, for the consecration of the anointing oil of his God is on him. I am the Lord. He shall take a wife in her virginity, a widow or a divorced woman, or one who is profaned by harlotry. These he may not take, but rather he is to marry a virgin of his own people, so that he will not profane his offspring among his people. For I am the Lord who sanctifies him. And meanwhile, the high priest has even more requirements. He has an even higher standard for holiness. The high priest could not go near a dead body at all, not even the bodies of his parents. And he wasn't to leave his tabernacle duties to attend to them. He's also prohibited from marrying not just divorced women, but widows too. He's only allowed to marry a virgin. And this higher standard is because he's the anointed. He wears those garments that embody God to the people, and the people to God. If he lives an unclean life, the people will be misled, because they'll think that God is unclean too. And perhaps worse, if he lives an unclean life and enters the presence of God, God will see his people as unclean and be less inclined to forgive them and protect them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron, saying, No man of your offspring throughout their generations who has a defect shall approach to offer the food of his God. For no one who has a defect shall approach, a blind man, or a lame man, or he who has a disfigured face, or any deformed limb, or a man who has a broken foot or broken hand, or a hunchback or a dwarf, or one who has a defect in his eye, or eczema, or scabs, or crushed testicles. No man among the descendants of Aaron the priest who has a defect is to come near to offer the Lord's offerings by fire, since he has a defect. He shall not come near to offer the food of his God. He may eat the food of his God, both of the most holy and of the holy. Only he shall not go into the veil or come near the altar, because he has a defect, so that he will not profane my sanctuaries. For I am the Lord who sanctifies them." So Moses spoke to Aaron and to his sons, and to all the sons of Israel. Meanwhile, for the descendants of Aaron that happen to have disabilities, there are restrictions on the capacity they can serve in as priests. They can be priests, and they can eat from the sacrifices, but they can't approach the altar, and they can't come into the tabernacle and approach the veil, which God's holy presence dwells behind. This goes for people with genetic disabilities that they were born with, and disabilities that happen later in life, even all the way down to temporary deformities, like people with a broken limb or with an eczema outbreak. God isn't being ableist here, but these deformities and disabilities are reminders of the brokenness of the world. In God's perfect vision for his creation, none of these disabilities would even be possible. But God, in his holiness, has to stay separated from these reminders about the sinfulness and broken state of his creation until such a time as that sin can be dealt with. In Matthew 21, when Jesus enters the temple, the successor of the tabernacle, and he cleanses it from the corrupt priests of his day, he brings in the blind and the lame, people like this passage is describing, and he heals them. Then, in Matthew 27, while Jesus is being crucified as the atoning sacrifice for all the sins in the world, the veil that separates God's Spirit from the rest of the world, it's ripped in half. Through Jesus' death and resurrection, God has been reconciled with his creation and is in the process of redeeming it, even right now, as was his plan all along. Nevertheless, this chapter shows us the rules and requirements for the priests in Israel at this specific point in history. From it, we see the importance of holiness, especially among those who are serving God vocationally and pointing others to him. That seems to be especially applicable in the day and age we live in today, where it seems like every pastor and Christian thinker is constantly being exposed for some secret sin. But regardless, the call to be holy as God is holy, that applies to all of his followers. And even when there's a physical or spiritual illness that stands in our way, we can trust in the healing and atoning work of Jesus, how he has redeemed us into a relationship with our Father. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.